A true INFJ can be intimidating, though not in the traditional or dominant way. Their power lies in their unsettling depth that's hard to define or predict. The intimidation they provoke is not usually loud or aggressive, but rather psychological, stirring something beneath the surface of those around them. Part of this comes from their quiet intensity. An INFJ often seems calm and reserved, yet their presence can feel incredibly strong. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to be broadcast. You feel it in their gaze, in the way they listen, not just to your words, but to what you don't say. Their ability to see behind masks unnerves people, especially those who are used to hiding behind them. What makes them so intimidating is this precise insight into others. INFJs often understand motivations, fears, and unspoken emotions long before anyone else realizes what's going on. You can't lie to them easily, not because they'll call you out directly, but because they'll know, and you'll sense that they know. That kind of psychological mirror is hard to stand in front of for long. People often feel exposed around INFJs, even when the INFJ says nothing accusatory or harsh. They just see, and that sight is sharp but quiet. This piercing perceptiveness can make others feel vulnerable, like they're standing under a microscope or being read like an open book. Their intensity is further amplified by their depth of feeling, which is often misunderstood. INFJs experience emotions with extraordinary richness, but they don't always show them. This creates a sense of mystery around them. They seem to be carrying something vast and sacred within themselves, ideals, convictions, visions that are not of this world. And they are often unwilling to dilute these visions for the sake of superficial relationships. That principled stillness can make people feel unworthy or even judged, despite the INFJ's genuine empathy. Check out our newly released INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video. Another intimidating aspect of a true INFJ is their ability to remain emotionally distant, even while being deeply empathetic. They can connect to someone else's emotional state with astonishing accuracy, offering comfort, insight, or advice that cuts to the core. But the reverse is rarely granted. INFJs are slow to trust, slow to open up in full. Their internal world is often locked behind 1,000 doors. Even those close to them often sense that they'll never fully penetrate that inner sanctum. This emotional asymmetry can be unsettling. You might feel like the INFJ knows your soul while theirs remains untouched, unreachable. INFJs are also intimidating because they're quietly relentless. While they may not confront others overtly, they hold themselves and those they care about to incredibly high standards. Their idealism is not soft or whimsical, it's ironclad. They believe in doing the right thing, in justice, in meaning, and they expect the same from others. When people fail to live up to those standards, the INFJ's disappointment, though often unspoken, can be crushing. They're not the type to lash out, but their silent withdrawal, their cold clarity when boundaries are crossed, can be more chilling than outright anger. They carry a quiet authority. It's not derived from dominance, but from wisdom. A true INFJ often seems older than their years, possessing insights that come not from books, but from deep, often painful observation and reflection. This gravitas makes others listen, even when the INFJ says little. It makes people reconsider their own behavior, their own values, just by being in the INFJ's presence. That kind of influence, subtle, enduring, and almost invisible, can be among the most intimidating of all. There is something inherently haunting about a true INFJ, something that doesn't fade once they leave the room. Their presence lingers, not because they try to be unforgettable, but because they leave behind a psychic imprint. People often find themselves thinking about what the INFJ said, or didn't say, days later. It's not uncommon for someone to suddenly realize the meaning behind a quiet comment, or a long-held gaze well after the conversation has ended. That delayed emotional echo is part of the INFJ's quiet power. They change you by simply interacting with you, sometimes without you even realizing it until you're already different. Part of what makes a true INFJ so intimidating is their unshakable inner compass. While many adapt to their environment in order to fit in or maintain peace, the INFJ remains anchored in something deeply internal and unwavering. They often carry a private sense of mission, a vision for the world or for themselves that they follow with almost spiritual devotion. This inner knowing gives them an edge that most people don't have. You can't manipulate them with trends, peer pressure, or fear. You can't shame them into going against their values. That kind of moral strength is incredibly rare and deeply intimidating, especially to those who rely on charm, force, or manipulation to maintain control. INFJs have a way of speaking in a language that bypasses the rational mind and goes straight to the emotional core. They don't just say things, you feel them. Even when they speak softly, it carries the weight of something profound, as if their words have been turned over in the depths before ever being spoken. They often see things that others miss, subtle shifts in tone, micro-expressions, contradictions between words and energy. They notice when something doesn't align, even if no one else catches it. That kind of awareness can make others feel uncomfortably exposed, as if their usual defenses are irrelevant in the INFJ's presence. INFJs can wield their words like surgical tools. They're not cruel, but they can be devastatingly precise. When pushed or betrayed, they don't need to yell or create drama. They can calmly state the truth in a way that cuts right to the marrow. What makes it intimidating isn't just the content. It's that the INFJ knows where to cut. They know where your insecurities live, where your rationalizations falter, and they have the discipline to stay silent until it's necessary to speak. When they finally do, it feels less like an argument and more like a verdict. Their ability to emotionally detach is another trait that catches people off guard. INFJs may appear warm, nurturing, and emotionally available, but when someone violates their core values or repeatedly disrespects their boundaries, they can withdraw in a way that feels absolute. It's not just physical distance, they emotionally seal off. And once the INFJ has shut that door, reopening it is rare. The coldness of that detachment contrasts so starkly with their usual warmth that it can be jarring. It's like discovering that the ocean you once found comfort in also holds the power to drown. INFJs are also intimidating because they don't rely on social rules in the same way others do. They can be hard to read, not because they're hiding, but because they live by an internal framework that often doesn't match the external world. They don't chase status, but they command respect. They don't seek attention, but they attract it. You may never quite know where you stand with them, not because they're playing games, but because they're always observing, always processing, often long before they decide whether to let someone in. They don't offer themselves lightly, and they don't stay where they're not valued. INFJs are intimidating because they are both mirror and mystery. They reflect back the truth, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, and they carry within them a labyrinth that few ever get to fully explore. They challenge people simply by existing. They force introspection. They make people confront parts of themselves they might rather avoid. And while they may appear quiet, even fragile to the untrained eye, those who have truly encountered a real INFJ understand. There is nothing fragile about them. They are forged of empathy and fire, of vision and discipline, of love and unflinching clarity. And that quietly, profoundly, unforgettably, is why they are so intimidating. Another intimidating trait of true INFJ is that they're not easily swayed, not by emotions, not by power, not by manipulation. They don't play games to get approval, and they won't participate in dynamics that lack integrity. This detachment from external validation gives them a rare kind of freedom, and with it, a quiet dominance. They will walk away from people, jobs, and even entire belief systems if those things violate their internal truth. That kind of sovereignty over one's life is deeply unsettling to those who live in fear of rejection, disapproval, or being alone. People sense that INFJs don't need them, not out of apathy, but out of spiritual self-reliance. That kind of independence makes them hard to control and harder to forget. There's also a quiet ferocity to INFJs that only reveals itself in moments of principle. They can endure a great deal with grace and patience, often giving others second and third chances. But if you cross one of their deeply held values, especially if you hurt someone vulnerable or mock something sacred, they transform. It's not rage in the usual sense. It's more chilling than that. It's a deep, crystalline refusal. Their anger is not reactive. It's righteous, contained, and purposeful. And when it rises, You feel the full weight of everything they usually keep hidden: their pain, their vision, their soul's demand for justice. They don't need to raise their voice. Their silence alone can level a room. Another thing that makes them very intimidating is their sheer self-awareness. INFJs spend a lifetime observing, analyzing, and reflecting, not just on others, but on themselves. They are constantly refining their inner world, constantly working to become more aligned with their purpose, their ethics, their truth. This kind of self-mastery is threatening to people who avoid introspection, who build identities on denial or ego. INFJs won't call you out with cruelty, but their very existence challenges you. They become a mirror to your inconsistencies. They don't do this deliberately. They simply live at a depth that others are forced to confront. That confrontation, for many, is deeply uncomfortable. Some respond by revering the INFJ. Others resent them for it. And then there's always the sense that they're several steps ahead, spiritually, emotionally, sometimes even strategically. They often sense how situations will unfold long before anyone else does. Their intuition isn't whimsical. It's surgical, honed through observation, pattern recognition, and a lifetime of emotional data. People may not always understand how the INFJ arrives at a conclusion, but when it plays out exactly as predicted, it's both awe-inspiring and unnerving. Their foresight makes people feel simultaneously safe and powerless, as if the INFJ is reading from a book the rest of us haven't seen. Their loyalty is deep, which is as intimidating as it is rare. When an INFJ chooses you, it's with a kind of sacred intentionality. They don't attach lightly, but that loyalty isn't unconditional in the way most people understand it. It comes with the expectation of authenticity, of emotional honesty, of growth. If you violate that unspoken contract, their detachment can feel like exile. The same person who once saw your soul and held your pain with reverence can become impossibly distant. And what makes this especially haunting is that they don't do it out of revenge or cruelty. They simply recognize when a door must be closed to preserve their soul. There's a quiet finality in that decision that no argument can reverse. The INFJ mind is very profound. Their thoughts are not confined to the moment. They stretch across timelines, patterns, and possibilities. When you speak to an INFJ, you are not merely talking to someone who's listening in real time. You're interacting with a person who is absorbing, filtering, and mapping your words against an enormous, often invisible framework of past experiences, emotional cues, and archetypal meanings. You may think you're having a surface-level conversation, but they're tracing the shape of your psyche in real time. And people sense this. They don't know how the INFJ knows what they know, they just know they do. That alone can disarm even the most confident individuals. There's also something unusual about how INFJs seem to live both within the world and slightly outside of it. They move through society, but they are rarely shaped by it. Trends, social conventions, peer pressures, they observe them, understand them, but are not bound by them. This detachment gives them an almost alien quality. Not cold or aloof, but transcendent. They give the impression of someone who could walk away from everything and not flinch. Someone who doesn't need the world to love them to feel complete. That's rare, and it can be deeply intimidating to those whose identity is tied to being seen, validated, or accepted. There's also a spiritual intensity to INFJs that's hard to describe, but impossible to ignore. Whether or not they follow a specific religion or belief system, they often have an aura of sacredness about them. They believe in things most people have long since buried: integrity, purpose, higher meaning, unconditional empathy. That devotion to the intangible can make them feel more like a force of nature than a person. You can sense that you're not just dealing with someone who wants to get along or make friends, but someone who is driven by an inner vow. It makes lightheartedness feel small in their presence, and it can cause people to recoil, not because the INFJ is trying to make them feel small, but because their mere existence demands something real. Time behaves differently around INFJs. They can make a single moment feel eternal. One look, one sentence can echo in someone's mind for years. Their words stay with you not because they're loud or forceful, but because they are true. INFJs don't deal in shallow affirmations or cheap advice. What they say often feels weighty, like a turning point in a novel, a pivot of understanding. That kind of impact leaves people reeling. And it's not just what INFJs say, but how they know when to say it. They sense emotional thresholds with uncanny precision. They know when someone is about to break or about to wake up. And when they speak into those thresholds, it changes people. That power, subtle, soul-shaping, invisible to most, can frighten those who don't want to be changed. Another trait of the INFJ that amazes people is their resolve. Though outwardly they may seem easygoing or soft-spoken, they possess a steel backbone forged from conviction. Once they've made a decision that aligns with their core truth, they cannot be budged. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient, lonely, or misunderstood, they will stand by it. They will let go of relationships, careers, or dreams if it means staying true to themselves. That kind of spiritual discipline isn't just rare. It's terrifying to people who live in constant compromise. The INFJ doesn't need to scream their beliefs. Their unwavering stance is enough to shake people, because deep down, many wish they had that kind of courage themselves. Perhaps the most haunting, and thus most intimidating, quality of the INFJ is their ability to love even after being hurt. They don't become cruel. They don't harden in the conventional sense. They remain soft, but selective. Their empathy doesn't die. It sharpens. They become guardians of their own tenderness, only allowing it to be seen by those who've earned it. That evolution, going from open-hearted to fiercely discerning, creates a depth of compassion that is both powerful and rare. It's the kind of love that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't demand. It simply is. And for many, being loved by someone who asks for nothing but truth is the most intimidating experience of all. INFJs are not intimidating because they want to be. They are intimidating because they are. Because they contain paradoxes that don't cancel each other out, but amplify each other. They are both gentle and fierce, open and impenetrable, present and elusive. They are the calm before a storm and the eye within it. They don't dominate with ego, but with essence. And in a world addicted to performance, their authenticity is not just rare, it's revolutionary. They are intensely self-contained. While many people are constantly reaching outward for validation, attention, or reassurance, the INFJ turns inward. Their energy is rooted, deep, almost immovable. They don't broadcast their insecurities because they've already wrestled with them in the silence of their inner world. They're not perfect, but they've been through their own crucibles. They've faced parts of themselves others avoid entirely. That psychological bravery grants them a quiet, intimidating strength. Others may mistake it for aloofness or superiority, but is something more elemental. It's the authority of someone who has earned their insight through solitude, suffering, and soul-searching. What also unsettles people is that INFJs refuse to perform. In a society built on personas, social strategies, and fake appearances, INFJs often appear to be playing a different game, or no game at all. They won't flatter someone to gain favor, and they won't pretend not to notice dysfunction just to keep the peace. They are unwilling to lie, especially to themselves. This brutal honesty cloaked in compassion can be deeply confronting. People often don't know whether to be drawn to it or retreat from it, because being seen by an INFJ is not always comfortable. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it's utterly real. While INFJs are deeply empathetic, they are also fundamentally discerning. They may offer understanding, but not access. Many people confuse warmth with availability, but with an INFJ, the two are separate. They can hold space for someone's pain, listen deeply, even offer healing insight, while still keeping their own soul guarded. This boundary is often invisible until it's felt, and once someone runs into it, they're often left confused or frustrated. It's hard to reconcile someone who gives so much of their emotional energy with someone who remains ultimately unyielding in how close they'll let you come. But that's the INFJ paradox. They can walk beside you in your darkest night and still remain a mystery. INFJs often carry the kind of silence that is not empty, but full. When they fall quiet, it doesn't feel like absence. It feels like presence turned inward. There's weight to their silence, a sense that something is being calculated or considered on a level you can't access. This can be deeply intimidating to people who rely on constant noise to feel in control. In the INFJ silence, people feel their own thoughts grow louder. Their own unresolved emotions rise to the surface. INFJs don't impose this, they simply hold space for it. But for many, being in the presence of someone who is not afraid of stillness can be unnerving. Even their compassion can be intimidating because it's not passive. INFJ empathy is often active, incisive, and unwilling to enable self-deception. They love deeply, but with high standards. They will not accept half-truths or ego masquerading as openness. When they love you, it is with the expectation that you will rise into who you truly are. They want your evolution, not just your affection. And that kind of love, though rare and life-changing, can be terrifying because it's not easy. It demands honesty. It demands growth. And many are not ready for that. INFJs live with a long-term vision in mind. They are not preoccupied with the immediate moment in the way many are. They see where things are going emotionally, relationally, even socially. This can give them a prophetic energy that others find strange or even threatening. They seem to speak from the future, sense consequences before they arrive, and understand people long before those people understand themselves. It's not magic, it's observation, intuition, and depth combined. But it feels like magic to those who rely solely on logic or surface impressions. And magic, especially when it's quiet and precise, is something people both desire and fear. What makes them so unique is that in all this, INFJs remain humble. They don't flaunt their insight. They often doubt themselves quietly, reflect endlessly, and carry the weight of the world in silence. But others sense their gravity, sense the complexity behind their eyes, and often don't know what to do with it. Because when you stand in front of a true INFJ, you're not just standing in front of a person. You're standing in front of depth, clarity, and conscience, all wrapped in human form. Check out our newly released INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video.